Close your eyes, if you wish, and let the edges of the present blur, as if a soft mist were settling over the clamor of today. The world outside can pause, its urgency fading into a distant hum. Tonight we invite you to drift gently into the past, to a land both vast and hidden, where the air carried the scent of snow and coal smoke, and the rhythm of life was shaped by a system as complex as it was unyielding. This is the Soviet Union, not the one of headlines or history books, but a world of quiet mornings, long queues, and small, stubborn acts of endurance. Imagine a village square dusted with snow, its wooden benches empty, its streetlights casting pale circles of light. Or a city street in Moscow, where trams clatter softly over steel tracks, their windows fogged with the breath of passengers bundled in heavy coats. This is not a story of revolutions or grand speeches, but of ordinary people, factory workers, school children, grandmothers, clerks who woke each day to face a world of routine and restriction, of scarcity and resilience, of silence and subtle defiance. We will move slowly through their lives, lingering in the small moments that define them, the clink of a teacup on a chipped saucer, the creak of a wooden floor in a cramped apartment, the soft rustle of a ration booklet tucked into a coat pocket. There will be no rush, no urgency, just the steady, soothing pulse of daily life, unfolding like a worn quilt drawn gently over your shoulders. This is a story of people who lived behind the Iron Curtain, not as heroes or rebels, but as neighbors, parents, and dreamers. Their days were shaped by the state's demands, yet filled with their own quiet rituals, sharing bread, telling stories, waiting for spring. Let us step into their world, then with care and calm, as if walking through a snow-covered field at dawn, where each step leaves a soft imprint, and the past waits patiently to be remembered. So settle in wherever you are. Let your breath slow, your thoughts soften. The modern world, with its lights and haste, can wait. Picture the faint glow of a kerosene lamp, the distant hum of a radio playing a waltz, the muffled crunch of boots on frozen ground. Let these sounds carry you gently across time, into a place where survival was not a triumph but an art, practiced quietly, day after day. Let us begin. Picture yourself waking in the dim light of a Soviet apartment, one of countless units stacked within a concrete block that rises like a gray monument against the skyline of Moscow, Leningrad, or perhaps a quieter city like Novosibirsk. The room is small, its walls painted a faded shade of green or blue, the color chosen years ago by a state planner with little regard for warmth. Wallpaper, where it exists, curls at the edges, revealing plaster beneath. The air carries a faint mix of boiled cabbage, damp wool, and the metallic tang of radiators that hiss and clank as they struggle to warm the space. The bed beneath you is narrow, its mattress thin but familiar, sagging slightly under your weight. A heavy wool blanket, patched in places, holds the warmth of sleep close. Above, a single light bulb dangles from the ceiling, its glow weak and flickering, casting long shadows across the room. Outside, the world is stirring slowly. Through the window, its frame warped and drafty, you see the first streaks of dawn filtered through bare birch trees or the silhouettes of neighboring buildings. If it's winter, frost patterns the glass, intricate as lace. If summer, a faint breeze carries the scent of dust and laundry drying on lines strung between balconies. You rise, your feet touching the cold wooden floor, its varnish worn to a dull sheen. In some apartments, a rug hand-woven, perhaps a family heirloom, offers a small comfort. The family moves quietly, their routines practiced and unspoken. The mother, wrapped in a faded housecoat, shuffles to the kitchen, a cramped corner with a single stove and a sink that drips unless the faucet is tightened just so. She lights the gas burner, its blue flame hissing softly, and sets a dented aluminum pot to boil water for tea or kasha, a porridge of buckwheat or oats that fills the air with a nutty, earthy warmth. Breakfast is simple, assembled with care from what the cupboard holds. A loaf of dark rye bread, its crust hard but its center soft, is sliced thinly to make it last. Butter, if available, is spread sparingly, its richness a small luxury. Jam, sour cherry or plum, preserved from last summer's harvest, adds a touch of sweetness, though it's rationed to a single spoonful per person. If supplies are low, the kasha is eaten plain, perhaps with a pinch of salt or a drizzle of milk from a neighbor's cow. Tea, brewed from leaves kept in a tin box, is poured into chipped porcelain cups, its warmth seeping into hands still stiff from the cold. The children dress in layers, woolen tights, sweaters knitted by a grandmother, and coats that are often hand-me-downs, their sleeves too long or too short. Scarves are knotted tightly, hats pulled low over ears. The father, if present, might wear a factory worker's jacket or a clerk's worn suit, his identification papers tucked into a pocket alongside a folded newspaper, Pravda or Izvestia. Its pages read and reread for news that is more routine than revelation. In communal apartments where multiple families share a single kitchen and bathroom, the morning is a dance of coordination. Doors open and close softly, footsteps echo in the hallway, and the air carries the mingled scents of soap, coffee, and cigarette smoke from a neighbor's early habit. Downstairs, the courtyard is a world of its own. Children know every corner, the rusted swing set that creaks with each push, the cracked pavement where puddles freeze in winter, the benches where elders sit in warmer months, their hands folded, their eyes watching the world with quiet patience. Laundry flaps on lines even in the cold, its edges stiff with frost. A stray cat weaves between the buildings, its fur matted, but its step purposeful. The courtyard is both public and intimate, a space where neighbors exchange nods or brief words, their voices low, their conversations careful. Transportation to work or school is a ritual of its own. The tram stop is a short walk away, its platform crowded with figures in heavy coats, their breath steaming in the morning air. The tram arrives with a groan, its doors creaking open to reveal a packed interior, the air thick with the scent of wool and damp leather. Passengers stand close, their bags held tightly, their eyes fixed on the passing city gray buildings, posters faded by weather, trees bare against the sky. Some read, their books or newspapers held close to save space. Others stare out the window, lost in thought, the tram's rhythm a steady lullaby. In the apartment block, life unfolds with a muted predictability. The day is not dramatic, not extraordinary. It is a sequence of small acts: picker, slicing bread, boiling water, knotting a scarf, boarding a tram that carry the weight of survival. There is no rush, only routine, a gentle pulse that binds the family, the neighbors, the city. The Soviet morning is gray, yes, but it is also warm with the quiet presence of those who live it. Their lives a testament to resilience in a world that demands it at every turn. The communal apartment, or communalka, is a microcosm of Soviet life. Its shared spaces a delicate balance of cooperation and caution. Imagine a hallway lined with doors, each leading to a family's single room, their lives spilling into the shared kitchen where gas stoves hiss and pots simmer. The bathroom schedule is a silent agreement, its violations a source of quiet tension. A single telephone, if the building has one, sits in the hall, its receiver shared with a formality that masks neighborly mistrust. Yet there are moments of warmth, a neighbor offering a slice of bread, a shared kettle of tea, a quiet conversation about the weather or a child's schoolwork. The morning unfolds slowly, each task deliberate. The mother might sweep the kitchen floor, its linoleum worn but clean, while the father sharpens a pencil with a small knife, preparing for the day's paperwork. Children practice their letters or recite poems for school, their voices soft but clear. The radio, if on, plays a state-approved waltz or news broadcast, its volume low to avoid disturbing the neighbors. The apartment block is a hive of quiet activity, its residents moving through their routines with a shared understanding of the day's demands. Outside, the city wakes in layers. Street sweepers in faded aprons brush snow or dust from the pavement, their brooms moving in steady arcs. A milk cart rumbles by, its driver calling out to regular customers. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of coal smoke from nearby factories or the faint sweetness of linden trees in summer. The tram stop is a hub of patient waiting, its crowd a cross-section of Soviet life workers in quilted jackets, students with heavy satchels, pensioners with string bags for the market. The tram's arrival is a small event, its doors groaning open, its passengers shuffling to make room. The journey to work or school is a study in endurance. The tram sways through the city, its windows rattling, its seats hard and cold. Passengers clutch their bags, their faces a mix of resignation and focus. A young woman reads a worn copy of a novel, her lips moving silently with the words. An old man dozes, his hat slipping over his eyes. The cityscape passes by gray apartment blocks, statues of Lenin with outstretched arms, posters urging productivity or unity. The tram's rhythm is hypnotic, its clatter a backdrop to thoughts of the day ahead. In the apartment block, the morning's quiet persists. The mother might linger in the kitchen, stirring kasha with a wooden spoon, its steam rising in soft curls. The father checks his watch, a battered relic from a past life, and heads for the door, his coat heavy with the weight of winter. The children bundle up, their mittens mismatched but warm, their school books tied with string. The courtyard sees them off, its silence broken only by the crunch of boots on snow or the creak of a gate. The Soviet morning is not loud, not bright, but it is alive with the quiet strength of those who live it, their lives a tapestry of small, necessary acts, woven together by routine and resilience. Now shift your attention to the quiet hum of a Soviet market, its air heavy with the scent of damp earth and stale bread. The market is not a place of abundance, but of patience, a space where people gather not just to buy, but to wait, to hope, to make do. Food in the Soviet Union was a daily preoccupation, not a guarantee. It was sought, saved, and savored with a care that turned every meal into a small act of triumph. Imagine a mother standing in line outside a state-run store, her coat buttoned tightly against the wind, her hands clutching a worn ration booklet. The line stretches down the street, a silent procession of neighbors, workers, and pensioners, their faces calm but watchful. The wait might last an hour, two, or more, and there is no certainty of what the store will offer. A delivery of bread, perhaps, or a rare shipment of butter. Oranges, if they appear, are a cause for whispered excitement. Their bright skins a fleeting promise of summer and the gray of winter. The store itself is sparse, its shelves half empty, its counters manned by clerks who move with deliberate slowness. A sign above lists the day's offerings: black rye bread, canned fish, macaroni, perhaps a few jars of pickled cucumbers. Meat, when available, is a luxury sausage or a small cut of pork, weighed carefully on a scale that creaks with age. Butter and sugar are rationed, their portions doled out according to the stamps in the booklet, each tear of paper, a transaction that carries the weight of a week's planning. Ration cards were the currency of survival, their pages worn from handling, their stamps a record of what the family could claim. Every household had one issued by the state, and losing it was a small disaster. The cards dictated not just what could be bought, but how much 2 kilos of flour, a half-liter of milk, a small block of cheese if the supply chain held. In times of shortage, which were frequent, the stamps were no guarantee, only a permission to hope. In the kitchen, food was stretched with ingenuity. A grandmother babushka might stand at the stove, her hands moving with the confidence of experience. She could turn a single potato into a meal, slicing it thinly for soup or grating it for pancakes fried in a pan greased with a precious dab of lard. Bones from a rare piece of meat were boiled for hours, their broth the base for a stew thickened with barley or oats. Cabbage pickled in jars lined up beneath the sink added a sharp tang to meals, its crunch a reminder of autumn's labor. Bread, the backbone of every table, was never wasted. Stale crusts were soaked in milk or crumbled into soup. Recipes were not written but remembered, passed down through generations like sacred texts. A borscht might simmer all day, its deep red hue drawn from beets grown in a daisha garden, its flavor enriched with dill or a spoonful of sour cream if the family was fortunate. Pancakes made from flour and water when eggs were scarce were a staple, their surfaces golden and crisp. Salads, simple combinations of beetroot, potato, or pickled herring were dressed with mayonnaise or oil, their flavors bold yet comforting. Dakas, those small country plots, were lifelines for many families. In summer, they traveled by bus or train to tend rows of carrots, onions, and cucumbers, their hands stained with soil, their backs bent under the sun. The harvest was preserved with care, canned, pickled, or dried to sustain the family through winter. A jar of tomatoes sealed with wax was a treasure, its contents a burst of flavor in the monochrome months. A sack of potatoes, stored in a cool corner, was a hedge against hunger, each tuber peeled with reverence. Meals were a communal ritual, even in scarcity. The family gathered around a small table, its surface scarred from years of use. Plates were mismatched, their edges chipped, but they held food shared with care. A slice of sausage was divided equally. A spoonful of jam passed from one to another. Conversation was quiet, often practical talk of the day's work, the next market trip, the health of a neighbor. But there were moments of lightness too, a child's story, a shared laugh, a memory of a better year. Tea was the constant, the heartbeat of the home. A samovar or kettle hummed on the stove, its steam warming the air. Tea leaves, rationed carefully, were steeped in a chipped pot, their flavor stretched with multiple brews. Sugar was rare, but jam, strawberry, apricot, or carrot was stirred into the cup, its sweetness a small indulgence. The act of drinking tea was a pause, a moment to sit, to breathe, to feel the warmth of the cup against cold hands. The market was a place of strategy as much as survival. A shopper might arrive early, hoping for a shipment of eggs or cheese, only to find the shelves bare. Bargaining was rare, the prices fixed, but a quiet word to a familiar clerk might yield an extra half-kilo of flour. Some turned to the black market, a dangerous but tempting option, where goods were traded in whispers behind closed doors. A kilo of apples might cost a day's wages, but the taste of fresh fruit was worth the risk to some. In rural areas, markets were smaller, often just a few stalls in a village square. Farmers brought potatoes, onions, or jars of honey, their goods displayed on rough wooden tables. The air was fresher here, tinged with the scent of hay and livestock, but the wait was no less patient. A grandmother might trade a knitted scarf for a sack of grain, her hands quick to seal the deal before others noticed. These markets were a lifeline, their goods a buffer against the unpredictability of state supplies. Food was also a source of pride, a testament to ingenuity. A family might invite neighbors for a rare feast, the table laden with dishes made from modest ingredients, a salad of beets and walnuts, a soup thickened with barley, a cake made with condensed milk. The effort behind each dish was unspoken, its presence a quiet victory. Guests brought small gifts, a jar of pickles, a handful of dried herbs, each item a token of shared survival. In times of plenty, the table might hold a roast chicken, its skin crisp, its meat tender from hours of slow cooking. Such meals were rare, reserved for holidays or milestones, and their memory lingered long after the plates were cleared. In leaner times, a single onion might be the star of the meal, its sharp flavor stretched across a pot of soup. Nothing was wasted. Even vegetable peels were boiled for broth, their nutrients extracted with care. The act of eating was a ritual of connection. Families sat close, their elbows brushing, their voices low. A child might ask for a second helping, their eyes hopeful, and the mother would smile, slicing the bread thinner to make it last. Stories were shared tales of a grandfather's war days, a neighbor's new job, a dream of a warmer spring. The meal was not just food, but a moment of togetherness, a pause in the relentless rhythm of survival. In the countryside, food was closer to the earth. A farmer might slaughter a pig, its meat shared with neighbors in exchange for firewood or cloth. Milk came straight from the cow, its warmth a contrast to the cold morning air. Eggs, when available, were a treasure, their shells carefully cracked to preserve every drop. The dacha garden was a source of pride, its rows of vegetables a testament to months of labor. A single cucumber, crisp and green, could bring a smile to a tired face. The kitchen was a laboratory of survival, its tools simple but effective. A cast-iron skillet, blackened from years of use, turned flour and water into golden pancakes. A wooden mortar crushed herbs, their aroma filling the air. A samovar, its surface tarnished but sturdy, kept tea warm for hours. Every tool had a story, its dents and scratches a record of countless meals. Food was also a teacher of patience. A mother might spend hours preparing a single dish, her hands moving slowly to preserve every ingredient. A child might watch, learning the art of stretching a meal, of making do. The kitchen was a classroom, its lessons unspoken but profound. Waste nothing, share everything, savor what you have. In the end, food was more than sustenance. It was a language of love, of memory, of endurance. Each bite carried the weight of the day's efforts, the week's planning, the season's labor. In every shared meal, there was a quiet strength, a reminder that even in scarcity, life could be nourished one careful spoonful at a time. Now imagine the steady hum of a factory at dawn, its walls of gray concrete looming against a sky streaked with early light. The air is thick with the scent of oil, metal, and coal dust, the sound of machinery a low, constant drone. This is the world of Soviet labor, where work was not just a job, but a duty, a cornerstone of identity in a system that measured worth by contribution. The 5-year plans, ambitious blueprints for industrial growth, turned every worker into a cog in the machine of progress, their days shaped by quotas, slogans, and the unyielding rhythm of production. Inside the factory, the air is heavy, the light dim through high, sooty windows. Workers move in practiced patterns, their hands guiding tools with a precision born of repetition. A lathe spins, its metal screeching softly as it shapes steel. A conveyor belt rattles, carrying parts to the next station. Men and women wear padded jackets or overalls, their faces smudged with grease, their eyes focused on the task at hand. There is little talk, only the clank of tools, the hiss of steam, the occasional shout of a foreman calling out a new target. The 5-year plans, launched in the late 1920s and continuing through decades, were the heartbeat of Soviet industry. They set impossible goals: more steel, more coal, more tractors, more cloth in a race to transform a largely agrarian nation into an industrial power. Factories sprang up across the landscape from the Urals to Ukraine, their smokestacks a symbol of progress, their output a measure of loyalty. Workers were urged to exceed quotas, to be Stakhanovich's heroes of labor who produced beyond expectation, their names celebrated in newspapers and posters. The posters were everywhere, their bold colors a stark contrast to the factory's gray. A worker with a raised hammer, his face radiant with purpose. A farmer driving a tractor through golden fields. Slogans in red and black. Build socialism. More for the motherland. They were not just decoration, but doctrine, a reminder that every bolt tightened, every bale stacked, was a step toward the future. Yet beneath the propaganda there was weariness. Shifts were long, often 10 hours or more. Machines broke down, their parts scarce. Winter made the work harder, the cold seeping into bones. The unheated halls a test of endurance. In offices the rhythm was different, but no less demanding. Clerks sat at wooden desks, their pens scratching across endless forms. The bureaucracy was a world of its own, a labyrinth of paperwork, approvals, and stamps. Reports were filed, figures recorded, often with the quiet understanding that the numbers might not reflect reality but expectation. A misplaced form could mean a reprimand, a delay in rations, or worse. Yet the clerks worked on, their hands stained with ink, their days a quiet march through routine. On collective farms or kolkhozes, labor was tied to the land. Imagine a field stretching to the horizon, its soil heavy with clay, its rows of wheat or potatoes swaying in the wind. Tractors, when they worked, groaned under the weight of plows. Women bent to weed, their scarves tied tightly against the sun or snow. Men repaired fences or hauled grain, their hands rough from years of work. The collective was a shared endeavor, its harvest owned not by individuals, but by the state. Private plots, small patches allowed for personal use, were tended with greater care, their yield a lifeline for the family. Work was not just physical, but social. Meetings were frequent, their agendas filled with discussions of quotas, plans, and party directives. Workers stood in circles, their voices low, their agreement expected. Criticism was rare, silence safer. Yet there were moments of pride of factory meeting its target. A harvest brought in before the frost, a bridge built where none had stood. These were not celebrated with fanfare, but with quiet nods, a shared sense of having done what was asked. The workplace was a community, its bonds forged in shared struggle. A worker might share a cigarette with a colleague during a break, their conversation brief but warm. A foreman might overlook a minor mistake, his nod a rare gesture of kindness. Women, often the majority in textile or food processing plants, shared stories of home, their laughter a brief escape from the grind. These moments were small but vital, a reminder that humanity persisted amid the machinery. The end of the workday brought a slow release. Workers left the factory in groups, their boots heavy on the pavement, their bags carrying a loaf of bread or a bar of soap from the workplace store. Some stopped at a canteen for a bowl of soup, its warmth a small reward. Others boarded trams or buses, their bodies swaying with the vehicle's motion, their thoughts drifting to home. The evening was a pause, a moment to rest before the cycle began again. In rural areas, work was even more elemental. Farmers rose before dawn, their breath visible in the cold air, their hands guiding plows or milking cows. The kokos demanded collective effort, but the private plot was a labor of love, its vegetables a source of pride. Women often led these efforts, their knowledge of the land deep and unspoken. A successful harvest was a quiet triumph, its bounty shared with neighbors or stored for winter. The 5-year plans were not just economic, but cultural, shaping how people saw themselves. To work was to contribute, to build, to belong. Yet the pressure was relentless, the rewards often intangible. A worker might receive a badge for exceeding quotas, its metal dull but heavy with meaning. A farmer might be praised in a local paper, their name a fleeting honor. These tokens were small, but they carried weight in a system that valued collective effort over individual gain. Labor was also a teacher. It taught patience as workers waited for delayed supplies or broken machines. It taught ingenuity as farmers repaired tools with wire and grit. It taught resilience as clerks filled out forms in unheated rooms, their fingers numb but steady. The workplace was a school of survival, its lessons harsh but enduring. In the quiet moments, workers found meaning. A machinist might take pride in a perfectly turned bolt, its threads smooth and precise. A clerk might smile at a balanced ledger, its numbers a small victory. A farmer might stand at the edge of a field, watching the sun set over rows of wheat, their heart full of quiet satisfaction. These moments were not celebrated, not recorded, but they were the heartbeat of Soviet labor. Labor in the Soviet Union was a rhythm of necessity, a daily act of contribution to a system that promised progress but demanded sacrifice. It was not glamorous, not always rewarding, but it was constant. In the clank of machines, the scratch of pens, the rustle of wheat, there was a quiet dignity, a sense that every effort, however small, was part of something larger, something that stretched beyond the horizon of a single life. Now, let your thoughts drift to the soft hum of a classroom, its air tinged with the scent of chalk dust and polished wood. The Soviet education system was a cornerstone of the state, a machine designed to shape not just minds but futures. to mold children into loyal citizens of the socialist ideal. Yet within its rigid structure, childhood found its own quiet spaces, moments of laughter, games, and dreams that bloomed even in the shadow of ideology. Imagine a schoolroom in a city or village, its walls plain but adorned with symbols of the state. A portrait of Lenin hangs above the blackboard, his gaze steady and benevolent. A map of the Soviet Union, its borders bold, stretches across one wall, its vastness a source of pride. The desks are wooden, their surfaces scarred with initials carved by restless hands. The windows, often drafty, let in a pale light that falls across rows of children, their faces attentive, their hands folded or raised in answer to a teacher's question. The teacher, often a woman, moves with quiet authority, her skirt brushing the floor, her voice firm but not unkind. Lessons begin with a ritual. Ready for labor and defense, the children recite, their voices a soft chorus, some earnest, some sleepy. The curriculum is broad: reading, writing, mathematics, science, history, geography, but every subject is woven with a thread of ideology. History lessons tell of revolutions and victories, of workers rising against oppression. Literature celebrates collective struggle, with stories of brave pioneers or selfless farmers. Geography traces the rivers and mountains of the motherland, its resources a testament to its strength. Discipline is strict, the rules clear. Hands are raised with straight arms, answers given in full sentences. Children memorize poems by Pushkin or Mayakovsky, their words recited in unison, the rhythm like a heartbeat. Homework is heavy, its pages filled with exercises that reinforce not just knowledge but loyalty. Yet there is pride in learning, a sense of being part of something larger. A good grade is a small triumph, a step toward a future as a doctor, engineer, or teacher. Outside the classroom, childhood unfolds in the spaces between structure. The school courtyard is a playground of sorts, its pavement cracked, its swings rusted but sturdy. Children chase each other in games of tag or kick a ball made of rags, their laughter bright against the gray. In winter they slide on patches of ice, their boots slipping, their scarves trailing. In summer they gather in the shade of a tree, trading stories or secrets, their voices low to avoid a teacher's ear. The Young Pioneers, the state's youth organization, is a central part of childhood. Nearly every child joins, their red scarves a badge of belonging, tied with a knot that symbolizes unity. The Pioneers are both a club and a duty, their activities a mix of play and preparation. Imagine a group of children in a park, their white shirts crisp, their scarves bright against the green. They march in formation, their steps uneven but earnest, singing songs of friendship and labor. They plant trees, visit veterans, or collect scrap metal for the state, their efforts praised in school assemblies. To be a pioneer is to be seen, to be counted, to be part of the collective. Yet childhood is not all ideology. In the evenings, children return to apartments or village homes, their hands smudged with chalk or dirt. They help with chores, sweeping the floor, peeling potatoes, or carrying water from a communal tap. They listen to grandparents' stories, tales of a world before the revolution, of winters so harsh the rivers froze solid. They read books, approved ones like The Adventures of Timur and His Team, or forbidden ones passed in secret, their pages worn from careful handling. School was a place of routine but also discovery. A child might excel in math, their pencil scratching out equations with quiet focus. Another might struggle with poetry but find joy in drawing, their sketches of tractors or flowers hidden inside textbooks. Teachers noticed these talents, sometimes offering a rare word of praise, their voices soft to avoid favoritism. The classroom was a place of equality, at least in theory, where every child was a future worker, their potential measured by effort rather than birth. The young pioneers also offered moments of joy. Summer camps brought children to lakes or forests, their days filled with games and songs. They learned to swim, their strokes clumsy but determined, or built rafts from branches and rope. Evenings were spent around bonfires, the flames casting shadows on young faces, their voices rising in songs about the motherland. These camps were a break from routine, a chance to be a child, if only for a few weeks. In the countryside, childhood was closer to the land. Village children tended animals, their hands gentle on a goat's flank or chicken's feathers. They ran through fields, their bare feet dusty, their laughter echoing across the landscape. School was often a long walk away, the path lined with wildflowers or snowdrifts, depending on the season. These children learned early to work, to contribute, their small hands pulling weeds or carrying water. Sleep comes early, the children curled in narrow beds, their blankets heavy with the scent of wool and home. The sounds of the apartment block surround them, the clink of dishes, the murmur of a neighbor's radio, the soft creak of a floorboard. Their dreams are simple, filled with the day's games, the teacher's voice, or the promise of a summer camp by a lake. Childhood in the Soviet Union is both structured and free, a balance of duty and joy, its moments fleeting but vivid, like drawings scratched into a school desk, fading but never fully gone. Now, let your mind settle into the quiet of an artist's studio, its air thick with the scent of oil paint and turpentine. A canvas rests on an easel, its surface half covered with bold strokes of red and gold, a worker's face taking shape under the dim light of a single bulb. In the Soviet Union, art was not a private pursuit but a public one, its purpose defined by the state, its boundaries carefully drawn. Yet within those limits, creativity found a way to breathe, to whisper, to endure. Socialist realism, the official doctrine, shaped every brush stroke, every note, every word. Art was meant to inspire, to uplift, to reflect the ideal of a socialist future. Paintings depicted workers with strong jaws and steady gazes, farmers harvesting golden wheat, soldiers standing resolute against the horizon. The colors were bright, the compositions clear, the message unmistakable. Life was purposeful, the collective strong. Abstract art, with its ambiguity and individualism, was dismissed as bourgeois, its practitioners sidelined or silenced. In music, the rules were similar. Composers like Shostakovich or Prokofiev walked a tightrope, their work celebrated when it echoed national pride, criticized when it strayed into dissonance. A symphony might swell with the sounds of folk melodies, its notes a tribute to the motherland's vastness. A choir might sing of unity, their voices rising in harmony in a concert hall or factory canteen. Yet there were moments of quiet rebellion, a melody too wistful, a chord too unresolved, that spoke of the artist's inner world. Theater and cinema were the state's loudest voices. Plays told stories of heroic workers or noble sacrifices, their scripts approved by committees. Cinemas showed films like Chapave, where the cranes are flying, their frames filled with images of struggle and triumph. Audiences sat in darkened halls, their faces lit by the screen's glow, their hearts stirred by stories that were both propaganda and poetry. A film might end with a worker raising a hammer, But it was the quiet moments, a glance, a pause, that lingered in the mind. Writers faced the same constraints. Novels and poems were published by state presses, their pages filled with tales of collective farms or factory victories. Yet some authors found ways to speak truth through metaphor, their words like seeds buried in the text, waiting for a careful reader to find them. Samizdat Underground Publishing kept forbidden works alive, their pages typed on thin paper, passed from hand to hand, read by lamplight in locked rooms. A poem by Akhmatova, a story by Solzhenitsyn, these were treasures, their words a quiet defiance. The dacha was another form of travel, a retreat to the countryside where families tended gardens and lived simply. The journey was short, a bus or train ride from the city, but it felt like another world. The dacha was a wooden shack or a small house, its walls weathered, its roof leaking in heavy rain. Yet it was a place of peace, where time slowed to the rhythm of planting, weeding, or sitting on a porch with a glass of kvass. Children ran barefoot, their feet dusty, their hands sticky with berry juice. The dacha was not escape, but connection, a return to the land that sustained them. Even city visits were a form of travel. A trip to Moscow or Leningrad meant wide boulevards, museums, and the weight of history. People stood before Lenin's tomb, their steps slow, their voices hushed. They visited the Hermitage, its halls filled with art, or walked Red Square, its cobblestones worn by countless feet. Souvenirs, postcards, pins, or a small matryoshka doll were carried home, their weight a reminder of the journey. In rural areas, travel was more arduous. A farmer might walk miles to a neighboring village, their cart heavy with goods to trade. A bus ride to a regional center was a rare event, its seats hard, its windows rattling. Yet these journeys were cherished, a chance to see a new market, to hear a different accent, to feel the world expand, if only slightly. Travel was not spontaneous, not free, but it was meaningful. The train's clatter, the sanatorium's calm, the dacha's simplicity, these were moments of pause, of perspective. They were a chance to see the vastness of the homeland, to feel its weight, to carry its memory back to the everyday. In the slow rhythm of travel, there was a quiet beauty, a sense that even a small journey could shift the heart, if only for a moment. Now, let your thoughts settle into the quiet of an elderly woman's apartment, its air heavy with the scent of tea and old books. She sits by a window, her shawl draped over her shoulders, her eyes tracing the snow that falls softly outside. Old age in the Soviet Union was a time of reflection, of carrying a lifetime of memories through a world that was changing, yet somehow stayed the same. Pensioners received a state allowance, modest but steady, enough for bread, tea, and a few necessities. Their days were slow, shaped by routine rather than ambition. The elderly rose early, their bodies stiff from years of labor, their hands moving with care to brew tea or slice bread. The apartment was small, its shelves lined with photographs, black and white images of weddings, children in pioneer uniforms, or a young couple smiling in a park long ago. Each photo was a story, its details vivid in memory, but rarely spoken aloud. Babushkas, the grandmothers, were the heart of the home. They tended gardens, their hands coaxing potatoes or onions from the soil. They cooked soups, their recipes unwritten but precise, the air filled with the scent of dill and cabbage. They told stories to grandchildren, their voices soft, their tales stretching back to wars, famines, or the bright days of youth. Their hands, lined and strong, knitted scarves or mended socks, their movements a quiet continuation of a life of care. Old men, too, had their routines. Some played chess in parks, their boards set on benches, their moves deliberate. Others read newspapers, their glasses slipping down their noses, their eyes lingering on headlines that echoed the past. Veterans wore their medals on holidays, their steps slow but proud, their memories heavy with battles fought and friends lost. They spoke little, their silence a language of its own, understood by those who shared it. Memory was a constant companion, vivid and heavy. The elderly remembered the cues, the slogans, the promises of a better future. They remembered the war, its hunger and loss, and the rebuilding that followed. They remembered parades, their banners bright, and evenings spent listening to the radio, its voice a thread connecting them to the world. Some memories were shared, a story of a harvest saved, a neighbor helped. Others were kept close, their weight too great for words. The twilight of the Soviet Union brought change, its signs subtle but growing. The elderly noticed the shelves fuller, the voices bolder, the churches reopening. Yet they remained rooted in their ways, their lives a bridge between the old world and the new. They mended clothes, saved scraps, and lived with a thrift born of necessity. Their apartments were museums of sorts, filled with objects that told their story, a samovar, a faded shawl, a book of poems read until the pages curled. As night fell, the elderly sat quietly, their hands folded, their eyes distant. The radio played softly, its music a reminder of younger days. Some wrote letters, their script careful, their words meant for children now far away. Others simply watched the snow, its fall a mirror to their thoughts, slow, steady, inevitable. Sleep came gently, their dreams filled with faces and places long gone, their breaths a quiet rhythm in the stillness. Old age was not a time of triumph, but of endurance, a final chapter written in small acts, brewing tea, telling a story, remembering a name. It was a life lived quietly, its weight carried not in words, but in presence, its legacy the memory of a world that had shaped them, and that they, in turn, had shaped with their steady, silent strength. As our journey through the Soviet Union draws to a close, let the images settle over you like a soft snowfall, each flake a memory of the lives we've glimpsed. We have walked through the gray mornings of apartment blocks, stood in the quiet lines of markets, felt the hum of factories, and listened to the soft prayers whispered in hidden corners. This was not a world of grandeur or freedom, but of resilience, of routine, of small, stubborn acts that carried people through decades of change and challenge. The Soviet Union was not just a state, but a way of life, its rhythm shaped by the clank of trams, the rustle of ration cards, the glow of a New Year's tree. Its people were not heroes or rebels, but workers, parents, children, elders each finding their place in a system that demanded much and gave little. They boiled tea, patched coats, sang songs and waited, their lives a quiet testament to endurance. We have seen the kitchens where soups simmered, the classrooms where children recited, the sanatoriums where time slowed. We have heard the music of forbidden records, the prayers of hidden faiths, the stories of those who remembered. History remembers the loud moments, the speeches, the marches, the wars, but it is in the quiet ones that life was lived. The clink of a spoon, the creak of a stair, the sigh of a grandmother as she lit a candle. Now, as you rest, let the Soviet world fade gently. its edges softening like a dream. The snow still falls outside those apartment windows. The trains still clatter in the distance, but they are far away now, their sounds a faint echo. Your world is different, brighter, perhaps, or freer, but it carries its own rhythms, its own small acts of survival. Let the past cradle you, its stories a lullaby, its silence a comfort. The fire is low, the room warm, the night deep. You are safe, wrapped in the quiet of history. The red star has dimmed, its light a memory, its weight lifted. Sleep now gently as the past drifts away, its lessons soft but enduring. Good night.